it's talking about it is tough. It's I can say it's also like a therapy session for me in a way, talking about it. People see the news and it's a screen. People haven't lived it, and it's tough. It's things war is being, they've said it's a war, and I can understand it being a struggle, but the happiness I can bring from it is the patients that came out of this. We would clap every single one as they left. We'd just clap them and just say, you've got it and you've done it, and seeing the family pick them up as well when they could come and pick them up, that was a reward. Oh, that was, yeah.
Gibraltar is both universal and local, both macroscopic and microscopic. Gibraltarians shared the global experience of the coronavirus outbreak, yet the rock's unique culture and geography shaped their distinct path through the pandemic. Gibraltar became one of the first countries on the planet to fully vaccinate its adult population. As masks are discarded, restrictions lifted, and sporting events resume, Gibraltar has become a test bed for the return to normal. History is still unfolding, but 1 year on, Gibraltarians are telling their stories of life in the bubble.
Everyone at home, get those grapes ready. Get that champagne ready to pop. We're nearly there. A new decade, a new year. 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. There it is. Happy New Year. Happy 2020.
It was a strange start to the year 2020. I didn't anticipate anything that was happening. I read, as I normally scan both research papers and the journalistic stuff, the newspapers and stuff. There was something that was flagging up in terms of Wuhan. I'd never heard of the place, but there was a report from China. I think at the time I picked it up, they were talking about 4 deaths, and something strange was reported in perhaps related to an animal marketplace. And I just had kept a beady eye on it, and about mid-January they started to talk about higher numbers, and I was at the civil contingencies meeting. That was, I think, a week later, third week or so of January, and the question was posed, because this was our regular review of our risk register, our community risk register, and that was, what's this flu pandemic thing?
Oh, goodness. It's been a very hard year.
And here it comes, the lowering of the European Union flag, which has flown proudly over this area of Gibraltar for decades. And now it comes down for the final time. The Gibraltar Band and Drums Association are about to start performing Ode to Joy.
The United Kingdom voted to leave the European Union in 2016. It was a divisive referendum, a choice between 2 very different futures. Gibraltarians had their say. By a majority of over 95%, they voted to remain in the EU. Perhaps an unsurprising result, life in Gibraltar is deeply entwined with life in neighbouring Spain. The Gibraltarian tongue flits effortlessly from English to Spanish and back. Every day, thousands of cross-border workers enter Gibraltar on foot, by car, on mopeds and electric scooters. The impact of Brexit in Gibraltar, on daily life, on trade, on jobs, looked set to be huge. On the 31st of January 2020, as the new coronavirus continued to spread, the UK left the EU, taking Gibraltar with it. The European Union flag was lowered, neatly folded, and packed away. Brexit had dominated many aspects of life on the Rock for years. Then COVID hit, and everything changed.
And funnily enough, early February, I think it was, a friend of mine flew over from China. He'd been living there, and he was telling me that, you know, things are crazy over there, you know, like lockdowns in cities and stuff, and you know, obviously hoping that it wasn't going to come to Gib. And then it was really weird because I haven't had COVID at all. Neither has my girlfriend either, but patient number 1, patient 0 in Gibraltar, was one of her colleagues, and he got it in Milan.
Patient, if I could assure you, is doing well, is at home, hasn't needed any hospital care. There's a clear definition of what a contact amounts to, and we're working our way through, starting with the health professionals, because obviously we need to protect them as much as to protect the patients that they're seeing. So we've seen all of them so far, and now we're going through a list of other potential contacts and giving them advice, and where necessary advising them to self-isolate at home.
So I remember understanding the route that first case had taken into Gibraltar, somebody who had, before there were any issues at all, quite properly had travelled to northern Italy for a concert, I believe, had come back through Malaga airport, an aircraft which contained people that might have had it, all of that tracing which you think about. Even then you thought this was something that could be potentially controlled.
But he was patient 0, he was the first person that we knew had COVID.
So in a way it's the concerning part that the symptoms don't start manifesting until 2 to 3 days later. But in my case particularly, symptoms were particularly similar, or in all cases very similar to an influenza, which is a high fever, headache, nausea, no vomiting though in my case, dizziness, lack of appetite, loss of taste. So very similar to what a bad flu would be for most of us.
People that had been in China, people that had got it, and we haven't had it, but we've noticed the effect, completely all around us. Family members have passed away because of COVID. We've had colleagues at work that have had COVID, and at the start of the year, we wouldn't have expected any of that. It was just worry about Brexit, really.
Gibraltar is over 10,000 kilometres from Wuhan in the People's Republic of China. News that a new viral pneumonia had been reported in Wuhan was picked up by the World Health Organization at the end of 2019. Images of health workers in protective clothing, of military vehicles disinfecting streets, of silent cities in an eerie lockdown looked apocalyptic. What we've all now lived through seemed inconceivable back then. As the international news became more alarming, the mood grew more ominous, confusing. Some people saw what was coming, others doubted. This new coronavirus spread easily, piggybacking in its human hosts. As people moved around the planet, the virus arrived in Europe and eventually slipped into Gibraltar.
Gibraltar was like one of the last countries to actually be fully infected with COVID.
We were very lucky the first time round. It really didn't hit us much.
The first time we heard when there was a virus going on in China, we didn't really think much about it because it was really small, and then it started growing until like almost the entirety of China was infected.
Gibraltar has always been strategically important, always culturally distinct. This gigantic, rugged promontory rises up out of the Mediterranean. Formed of Jurassic limestone, it is ancient, timeless. Gibraltar's waters could tell stories of invasions and piracy that go back centuries. Guarding the eastern mouth of the Straits of Gibraltar, where Africa and Europe meet, the rock is highly prized territory. It has been coveted by ancient peoples and modern nations alike. Today, it is a British overseas territory. Just a thin sliver of land connects Gibraltar to the Spanish mainland. The surrounding seas are vital for trade, for shipping, for tourism. The straits are also witness to smuggling and criminality. Named Jabal Tariq in Arabic, Gibraltar faces Jebel Musa, a towering, bulky mountain across the water in Morocco. Together, they are the ancient pillars of Hercules. Here, a distinctive maritime culture thrives around a vibrant island-like community. These are the things that have shaped Gibraltar's experience of and response to the coronavirus pandemic.
I think it was either very late January or beginning of February. So we'd already, I think it was the end of January where we first got our first instruction from the Collector of Customs. I was walking down the pontoon and I was with a female officer that's in our crew. And as I was approaching, I was saying, we're going to go on board and search that vessel. So I just got a feeling about it, and straight away the agent came, no, you can't go on it, you can't go on it, you need gloves. To be honest, I thought he was joking. I thought they were taking the mick out of us. And then it's like, no, it was one of the passengers, one of the crew members has jumped on the boat and he might be... So that crew member was actually isolated in a room, but they didn't want no one on it, no one off it. It's like, for me, it was that moment in time that I thought, this is real, this is getting to Gibraltar, and it's like... So yeah, for me it was probably that moment. Yeah, definitely.
I think for me, on the outside was seeing the news of Italy, especially seeing the hospitals being overrun. That was quite shocking and quite impacting, I think, in all our lives.
The first case of coronavirus in Italy was confirmed at the end of January 2020. By mid-February, community transmission was fueling outbreaks in Lombardy. Small towns were placed in quarantine. Police and military patrolled the streets. Soon, all of Italy was locked down. It looked like a horror movie. Silent cities, trucks transporting the dead at night. Italians posted on YouTube and social media, warning us to get ready and be prepared. Everything was about to change.
Italian people are very scared and anxious. A lot of people are worried. They might not see their families for a while, and I think just as I said, it was the first time that a situation like this happened in the history. People are confused, are disoriented. They are dealing with the virus, but furthermore, they don't know what to expect. And doctors are asking to breathe. So please stay at home and follow the rules. I know it's scary, but please follow the rules. This is the only way to prevent containing the virus. Doctors are under pressure. They are scared, perhaps more than patients. They don't have enough information about the virus, are discovering several symptoms every day. A lot of them have been practically living in the hospital without ever seeing their families. And they start working in the morning and they finish their shift after 24 hours. We don't know why Italy was so badly affected, but Italy is just the first country, and I want to say to the other countries just one thing: be prepared, get ready, because when it arrives, it's like an explosion.
The richest region of Italy, with the best hospitals in Italy, some of the best hospitals in Europe, couldn't cope. And you start to see that the politics of a public health system that cannot cope is starting to affect the reality, the human reality of people who are losing their lives because of this. And the beginning of it was the realization that we had to have a way to communicate quickly amongst ourselves, so that it wasn't even fast enough by email, it had to be by WhatsApp. We needed to know immediately what was going on. That's when you know that you've got something you're dealing with which is serious, which is about to hit, and you're preparing yourself with your battalions, so to speak, to face it. But it's invisible. This is not an enemy that you're going to see coming towards you. And I think that was the most horrific part of what we were dealing with. That we were told there's a zero case in Gibraltar now. And we knew it was here, but we didn't know how far it had gone. We didn't know where it was going.
Nobody really knew what we were preparing for. How serious was this? Will we run out of food? There were rumours and confusion. There were denials and distrust.
I remember the first day when they said Morrison's was closing. There was rumours Morrison's is closing. And everybody it was crazy, and it was very, very scary. That day was really, really scary because everybody was just piling, and you could see there wasn't any pasta, there wasn't any milk.
Well, not everything, but at least we understand, no? The situation, not everything is available, but I think we've managed to get the few things we wanted.
I think the government is denying loads of stuff from us. They're not telling us the whole truth. And as you can see, everyone's seen it on the news. China was the first place affected, and they're the ones with less casualties right now. Why? Because they went into lockdown and everything was controlled. Down here, we're still working. What do you have to wait for? Somebody to die or something really major to happen for them to take action?
Buenas tardes, estimados compatriotas. En el día de hoy acabo de comunicar al jefe del Estado la celebración mañana de un Consejo de Ministros extraordinario para decretar el estado de alarma en todo nuestro país, en toda España, durante los próximos 15 días.
Watching a Spanish president take Spain into what they call, the direct translation is a state of alert, right? Hearing at the same time that Liz Truss, the International Development Secretary, is positive for COVID, it starts to become very real. Very personal, and also, of course, very political.
As from Tuesday, observe the rules that we have made to protect you. Be out as little as you have to. Get home as quick as you can. An invisible killer lurks amongst us, and you can do your bit to slow its passage through our city by observing these rules.
I could never imagine that I would be announcing a lockdown to restrict the ability of individuals to be able to move freely about our geography. A lockdown, a permanent curfew, don't go to work.
Travel and social restrictions started to tighten in and around Gibraltar. Events were cancelled, Bars, restaurants and offices closed. Morocco suspended ferry links and Spain completely locked down. Then, on the 24th of March, Gibraltarians were ordered to stay home too.
But when it hit home for me in Gibraltar, quite weirdly, was actually when I do a lot of walking. So I was out walking one day and I noticed someone coming towards me, and I thought, oh, we're going to cross like we normally would do. This person actually went out onto the road and sort of did a half circle around me to move past, and I went, oh my God, this is real, you know, and that's what impacted on me. I looked back and thought, she went back on the pavement and carried on walking. Oh my God. You think about it, if this doesn't change, there's babies of today that will not know any different to what it is now.
Throughout history, artists have responded to momentous events. Like everyone else, Gibraltar's artists had to adapt to life in lockdown. Some have been prolific producers. Others will first observe and process before making pandemic artwork. Each has their own story.
I was living in Santa Margarita in La Linea at the time when the confinement last year in March was set, and I think it was starting on a Sunday, sometime in March, and on the Saturday I had to come back to Gibraltar, and I didn't have anywhere to stay, so I had to go in with my kids, my wife, all to my brother's house, and then that was when it hits you. It was like, you know, I've got nowhere to live right now. I'm in my brother's house. I've had to move over because of, you know, not being able to cross the frontier at some point tomorrow.
I knew I could come in today to collect my work things, and then I'm working from home.
I'm very surprised at how smooth it was and is, and how calm everybody is. There's absolutely nobody in the streets in La Linea. I can't hear very much traffic, I can't see very much queue. Everything is very gentle. See what it's like this afternoon, because I read online this morning that the Andalusian, the head of the Andalusian government is pressing for closing down the border with France and Andorra and Portugal and here, so we'll just have to wait and see what the day brings us.
This side I didn't think there was going to be a problem anyway, but going back I think I'm probably going to have a problem. I live in Spain but I work here, so I'm going into work to get my equipment to work from home. So the question mark is the other side, but who knows?
Nada, hecho. It's the same as I was expecting, because there is a paranoia state all around the world.
I thought it was much more quiet now, so I thought it would be worse, because I've been told by my employer that I need a permit to cross the border, but it was all right.
Every day, thousands of pedestrians and vehicles cross the border between Gibraltar and La Linea in Spain. Mostly, cross-border movement is smooth. Sometimes there are queues and delays. However, the frontier is always open, 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. Then, in March 2020, Spain closed its external borders. Only Spanish citizens, residents, or cross-border workers could enter. Non-essential travel was prohibited. The impact on Gibraltar was immediate. Nobody knew how long the restrictions would last, and memories of the past were stirred.
In June 1969, the Spanish government struck its hardest blow against Gibraltar. Overnight, General Franco ordered the withdrawal of the Spanish labor force from the Rock and closed the land frontier. This was perhaps the most dramatic decision taken by Madrid in its campaign against Gibraltar since 1964. The drama carried on all day. The workers, carrying their few belongings and their tools, trooped across the frontier into Spain for the last time, and the gates closed at 11:30.
And so it's important both to protect the workers who are coming into Gibraltar so that they can stay in their homes in Spain in keeping with the Spanish decree, and to stop the spread of the virus in Gibraltar by importing it from Spain and having it congregate in workplaces where social distancing cannot be practiced, that we should take this decision. But there's no question whatsoever of my conversation with Senor Fernando de Banasca having been anything other than entirely positive and cordial, and it was an opportunity to talk about how we might help people who find themselves in a difficult situation, but it was primarily about keeping the frontier flowing, and the way that Spain was ensuring and wanting to give us assurances that the frontier would continue to flow. So really quite the opposite. I wouldn't want anybody to think that the government of Gibraltar is acting as a result of an imposition or a condition which was not even mentioned in the phone call.
Well, I managed to get someone to lend me a flat eventually, you know, and you just get on with life, the routine. But I'm a teacher, and it stopped. The actual schools just shut down, you know, everything. I was in home most of the time, and everything sort of became smaller and more confined. Life in general, you know, all these restrictions that were being put, and you could go out for a jog or for a walk with your kids.
If you're out, walk on your own. Parents, walk only with children. Do not congregate with others. As from Tuesday morning, I am very sorry to say that the Royal Gibraltar Police will have power to enforce these regulations. We realize the heavy burden that will impose on our officers. Please help them by not knowingly contradicting rules that we are putting in place to protect you and your loved ones. Please follow the instructions of a police officer who is acting pursuant to these regulations. This is about enhancing social distancing. There will be power to enforce these regulations by a police officer for this purpose.
And I think you would actually, I think it helped in a way to value more what you have. Those little moments that are quite special, sharing it with your family. So COVID has given me time to think, time to develop ideas, time to actually be able to come into a space like this and develop projects which in the past I haven't been able to. In a way, I think that most artists are almost always in confinement, in their own way. You need to have the time and the space to be creative. So it's really helped, I think.
Because of the pandemic and all that, obviously the virus came into mind, and I started making little viruses, which were basically like pinch pots, yeah? And at that moment in time, the first lockdown, it was basically about producing viruses, you know, producing viruses. I had some sort of idea of what I was going to do, but not the complete idea. But it's a process. This project was like a process, and to keep my mind, you know, that's sane.
But it was still really weird to think that, oh my God, actually you just spent the last year in a pandemic and my brain's been telling me that I'm just hanging out in my house all day, doing nothing, and that's fine. So I think probably didn't really hit me until a lot later in, but the beginning, it was a light settlement that there was a bit of a pandemic going on. It's difficult to say positive because I feel so guilty saying positive, but it was positive in the sense that I've found a lot more confidence in myself, in my art, in my way of being. I've learnt how to not really keep quiet, but to choose where I speak and where I concentrate my personal energy. And it's been really positive. Obviously, I know it's not a positive situation for everyone, and I'm really grateful and lucky that I live the life that I actually have. But yeah, it definitely was positive to a certain extent, as difficult as it is to say.
Using for sports facilities for stuff related directly to the pandemic was what's the word I use? Daunting, scary.
Trying to work out whether we could deal with this or not was difficult. I remember the Director of Public Health telling the COVID Exco, as it was then, the numbers of casualties that we might see in Gibraltar.
So I had to make that presentation, I had to make that case, and I said, simply enough, you know, Chief Minister, if we follow the case fatality rate that is that the World Health Organization talking about, which they presented, 3.4%.
The world remains dangerously unprepared for a global pandemic. For too long, the world has operated on a cycle of panic and neglect. We throw money at an outbreak, and when it's over, we forget about it and do nothing to prevent the next one. This is dangerously short-sighted and frankly difficult to understand. If we fail to prepare, we're preparing to fail.
I said, I cannot think of a biological reason why Gibraltar is densely populated. What does a case fatality rate of 3.4% represent? And I said, even if you take a better case scenario, that the population fatality rate, which is the whole population, is coming in about 1% at the time. So I said, if you work it through, you're talking about anything from 100 to 300 deaths.
You don't think about that too much when you think about the infrastructure of Gibraltar. You don't think about pathology and the cemetery and the mortuary. You pay your government to think about those things. And your government has really been able to deal with those things for many generations in Gibraltar. But when you're told that you could face 400 people dead in 1 month, you realize that you haven't got the infrastructure.
Pictures began to show lots of hospitals piling up with people, bodies, and that brought something home. And then, of course, there was the picture in Spain.
The impact of COVID-19 is not seen equally by everyone. Its most brutal effects are confined to the homes of the sick and to hospitals. By late March 2020, 2 months after the first confirmed case of coronavirus in Spain, the country had reported over 4,000 deaths. Videos of overwhelmed Spanish hospitals caused shock in neighbouring Gibraltar. The densely populated community of Madrid was the worst affected.
That was terrifying. I was really, really scared. I was scared at many levels. Obviously, you think of yourself and your family and how will you survive it, seeing these people dying in the corridors, no? And clearly the world wasn't ready for it.
And it wasn't easy. I did a presentation to my clinicians, the doctors. We have an educational setting on a Friday, and I painted that scenario of the 1%, the 3.4% mortality. And people were traumatized. There were people who said, how can you say this? You have made, I won't be able to sleep at night. You've got to give us it in a more gentle way. What are you doing? And the problem for me was, I was not sleeping at night because I saw the tsunami coming.
During 2020, Gibraltar had kept the spread of the virus more or less under control. But cases started to rise alarmingly at the end of the year. Like everyone, Gibraltarians were weary of restrictions. Dire predictions of the local impact of coronavirus had not come to pass. But a wave was coming, and the spike would be sharp. In the first month of the new year, cases surged to over 4,000. In 2020, Gibraltar had recorded 7 COVID-related deaths. By the end of January 2021, the virus had claimed the lives of 77 Gibraltarians. In this tight-knit community, almost everyone was affected in one way or another. The pandemic has been divisive at times. People have questioned who to trust. Conversations have been heated in households, on social media. Yet shared trauma can also unite communities. New efforts started to slow the spread. But Gibraltar had also recorded the second highest COVID-related death rate per capita.
The fact that we were going with a PP, that meant that when we got back, it was going to take at least half an hour to clean the whole unit.
Decontaminate all the equipment,
the
everything.
de-donning. So everything just took very long. And obviously I remember a specific day where I had a patient that was COVID positive. My colleagues were doing a transfer back home, and my other crew was doing another job. And it was over the radio, we have a patient on dialysis with a bleed and an allergic reaction, I believe it was. So both of them quite serious, and we were all committed on jobs. So it was a fact of, right, quick, let's get back.
Clean up
quick as best as you can, and right, let's go. And you think it could have ended up as a massive
it got a lot
disaster.
busier.
Yeah.
We had a lot of calls pending. It got to a point where we'd be handing over an A&E and you'd be getting a call, like trying to free us up so we could go to this pending call, and you were stressing out because you had to you had to try and decontaminate as many things as possible, and obviously you would want to be safe. You're not going to go to a patient's house to help them and in the end give them the virus. So it was just like that stress in your mind all the time, making sure you're trying to decontaminate, remember what exactly was used, what wasn't used, and it was just like a bit of mayhem at one point. But it's made me realise how much I like the job now that it's not COVID related.
Even in January, I don't think anyone thought that it was that serious, or that we were going to have the consequences and repercussions that we had during the year.
It was a little bit scary initially because this was completely new for everyone. So we were learning how to treat these patients, how to look after them. Also, most of the people on the wards had come from somewhere else. So we also had to learn to work together as a team.
I think at the time we were thinking like everybody else, it's not going to come here, it's not going to come here.
But you know, it's been such a strange year that sometimes you actually forget how hard it's been for the last year.
Okay, you've got to remember, you know, this is a respiratory virus and we're such a small place. And, you know, we're such a close-knit community that anything with a respiratory virus is worrying because it would spread quite quickly.
People don't realise, they don't understand how vital oxygen has been in this pandemic. The first wave not having such a big impact allowed us to get a lot more equipment in at short notice before everything became impossible to source.
I was scared, no? Especially when the doctors, so they're my colleagues, and especially the intensivists, they sat us down and they said, we're seeing many cases in other countries. I have friends who are advising me to be aware and to be prepared for the wave when it comes.
Some were from outside the UK. We had some English nurses, some Spanish nurses, a couple of local ones, so we didn't know each other. So it was, for the first couple of weeks, it was a really big period of learning, and you felt as if you were drowning a little bit the first couple of weeks.
Getting dressed, and they say like when paratroopers, when they jump out of a plane, they prepare their parachute almost like a ritual. It became like that when we were putting on our equipment every single time we went in.
And you're not only there just as a nurse. For me, nursing is more, it's a vocational job. You're an advocate, you're a support system for patients as well as family members, and you watch them grow. You watch them grow, and no one knows what patients live in hospitals and how scared they are. Not even the families, you know, because they all become brave and strong for them. But when you're along with them, they share some things which, you know, is close to you.
I feel on the whole the nurses in the GHA were a bit like warriors, really. Yeah. And there's a lot of them that are maybe unsung heroes, you know, like some of maybe the nursing assistants who used to take turns to sit with patients.
The nursing assistants and even the cleaners, we all pitched in and did beyond what our job description did, because I think the job description didn't matter by that point. I had cleaners pitching in, helping moving patients, because they saw that we were struggling and they thought, I've done my job, and they would put on gear and help distribute the food and stuff like that. And that's when I realized that my team was amazing.
We've got an awesome team. You know, we've gone from 2 to there's 5 of us now, and you know, it's amazing. I wouldn't change it for anything. We've been through a lot, but we've also laughed a lot as well.
Grey hairs.
We fought as well,
More grey hairs.
and definitely more grey hairs.
I think the way that people sort of came forward, and because a lot of people volunteered that time as well, outside to help people with their shopping, the elderly people, they'd take prescriptions for them to the home, they'd take their shopping, leave it at the door. And I think that shows how special Gibraltar is and how people rally round to help anyone.
Hundreds of Gibraltarians volunteered to help however they could. Grassroots efforts were vital in this close community. In modern times, we have become accustomed to living free from the threat of widespread disease. COVID-19 changed that. We were all impacted, but not equally. Lockdowns forced us to stay at home. The sick were mostly unseen. On the front line, those who care for and heal others bore witness to the brutal realities of the disease. Their stories are personal testaments. Both now and in the future, they will help us to understand.
I'm feeling a bit nervous, you know, it's kind of strange, it's a strange feeling, you know, just after 5 months of doing nothing and not going to school, and now everything is going back to as normal as it possibly can be. I'm feeling a bit weird, especially with like rules like wearing masks. I don't think I'll be very comfortable with that, but I guess I'll have to live with it.
It's a lot different now, because obviously like now we have to wear masks in school, and like it's a whole different environment for everyone. So like I feel like everyone's going to be like a lot more nervous because it's like so uncertain. So like me myself, like I'm quite nervous to go back to school because it's all different and everything's changed. So like it's just a whole different atmosphere now, and people don't know what's happening with like the school and exams and everything.
Many of my friends and other students are having to self-isolate for 2 weeks because of an outbreak within the uni and Manchester itself. The vast majority of my teaching is now online, which is already causing some problems as I'm finding it really difficult to connect with my teachers and other classmates.
Around 3 days ago, my 7 flatmates and I started to show some potential COVID symptoms, and yesterday we took the decision to go get tested, and later that evening we all got the text message from the NHS that we were positive for coronavirus. Obviously, no one wanted or anticipated a Freshers' Week like we're having this year.
There has been a lack in face-to-face communication and interaction between students and tutors. Besides this, a lot of support has been given to us through social media and online resources.
I've been very lucky in the sense that I haven't been directly affected by coronavirus. However, I know many people that have been and are currently self-isolating, which has made life here at university very different to what we're all used to.
We've just been told that we need to stay home these coming weeks and do all of our lectures and course online, and that eventually we will be going in, but every week there's just more cases that keep going up. At the moment we still don't even have timetables or really know what's going on, so we're just all very in the dark at the moment here in Northumbria.
All lectures are online on Zoom. Secondly, I'm set to attend the actual uni itself at least 4 times maximum. So other than that, I'm staying in the house with 8 other lads, all going on Zoom calls, which means all of us at once with a collective amount of 300 hours a week worth of lectures is just, it's horrible because all of us going on at once, the Wi-Fi isn't prioritized.
I did eventually develop some symptoms, and in fact I did contract the virus. Thank God they've not been too bad and I'm on the route to recovery, but isolation has allowed me to keep up with uni work. Everything's online, so I've not really missed out on much.
The advice to students is that they shouldn't be travelling to their permanent home and back to university. They should stay where they are, but the Department of Education is launching an information service for students. They're launching a phone number for students to contact, and they're asking students in particular to familiarise themselves with the advice being given by their university in their region, in their nation of the United Kingdom. There is no one-size-fits-all advice for Gibraltar students.
An exciting milestone in the university's history, really. And in the words of one of our Beacon professors, to have achieved our first graduation in 5 years is a real achievement. And 21 graduates who I think thoroughly enjoyed their opportunity to celebrate.
But people were working shifts and shifts beyond shifts. There were people going into work at 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock in the morning and working till 2 in the morning.
Because it's just going to hit you suddenly. And a matter of fact, that's what happened to Gibraltar. We were fine one day, and then within a period of 3 days, the ICU was full. Everyone, so many cases of COVID, and we just had to work. And it was 12 and a half hour shifts of us going in there and maybe only leaving for half an hour or an hour. Sorry. Very scary.
And the thing about COVID, which the news say that, oh, they're suffocating. And the scary thing is when we check the oxygen saturation, the percentage of oxygen in the blood, the number, it was nothing like what a textbook would say. They would be on the floor. They would have really bad, they didn't have enough oxygen in their body. But physically, at least at the beginning, you would say they looked fine. They looked fine. They were a little bit short of breath. I remember there was this old lady that the oxygen was on the floor. Maximum, we were providing as much as we could. And I was with the doctor, and we told her, there's nothing, I'm really sorry, we can't do anything more. And she asked us, but why? I feel fine. I feel a bit short of breath and I can't get out of bed, but I feel okay. And that's what, it's hard because it kept reoccurring with our patients. They just didn't understand. They felt fine. And we on the medical view were like, I know you feel fine, but there will reach a point where, and it would happen. Close the curtains for now. We really need to, let's focus on the ones which are with us at the moment, and we'll get him ready, we'll get him out when we can. But it was, and when that became a norm, that's when it was tough.
For me, it was seeing, I saw such examples of compassion and bravery that I've never seen before. And in such small things, everyone was so terrified. So for somebody to go against that fear and do something to help somebody else had 10 times the value that it had in normal times. And there was daily examples of that, daily examples of just, you know, people helping each other with their PPE on, you know, people doing things to help patients, people not being afraid, you know, and going and seeing loved ones. For me, that was a constant light in the darkness, definitely.
It was awful. It was awful. People were very unwell. Some of them, they couldn't have visitors unless they were end of life. I mean, nearly every day somebody would pass away. Sometimes 2 people would pass away on the same day. And of course, we became a little bit invisible, I think, to patients as well, because we were wearing the full PPE. It was hard for them to identify us. It was hard. I remember I contracted COVID myself on the ward, probably through my own fault, because I remember taking off my glove to hold somebody's hand, which I shouldn't have done, and then I must have scratched my nose or something and caught it. So, but it was something that I couldn't help doing, because it's not the same holding somebody's hand with 2 pairs of gloves than actually holding the hand. So yes, maybe I shouldn't be saying this because I shouldn't have done it, but that was the reality. And I think that's why I contracted it.
Talk of a COVID-19 vaccine began when the pandemic was still in its early stages. Science unfolded in public as never before. Words like epidemiology, peer review, and clinical trial became everyday vocabulary. People were talking about virology and public health on high streets and social media. To many, vaccine development has been a remarkable show of what scientists can achieve in collaboration, unfettered by bureaucracy and lack of funds. To others, it remains a cause for hesitancy or scepticism. This January, nearly 6,000 Pfizer vaccines arrived in Gibraltar on board a military aircraft, and community vaccination began. More doses would soon follow. Now, the entire adult population of Gibraltar has been vaccinated.
We had to do a lot of training before we actually started the vaccine program. So every single nurse who was working in the vaccine program had to complete online training on both the Pfizer and the AstraZeneca, just to prepare ourselves just in case. We have been administering the Pfizer at the ICC. We also had to refresh our training in anaphylaxis, so we were fully prepared for anything and everything that can happen. So together with the GPs that were actually redeployed to the vaccine centre, we continuously kept updating ourselves, because as weeks went on, we had more and more information on how effective it was and what percentage of people were having it, the immunity response, whether the age groups that could have it, whether pregnant women could have it, whether breastfeeding women could have it. So everything was changing along the way. The more information, the more positive it was looking. The more we could see about what was happening in other countries, we were responding. We were responding, I would say, even better, because we had a huge response. We were administering to most of the population, and COVID started dying down. Everything in that respect started quieting. So it was like, this is working. This is it. This is going to change everything for us.
Very well, no effect at all. Just a bit of pain on my arm, but it was okay.
Fine, no problem at the moment, feeling fine. So let's wait and see for this one. Let's see how it goes.
I'm feeling very well and very grateful and full of admiration for the wonderful work that they're doing.
Now we want just looking at the COVID results. Every morning we'd look at the COVID and the vaccines and go, oh, a bit more, oh, a bit more. Oh, half the population has had the first one. And then we were obviously it was extended to cross-frontier workers as well. We thought we're going to have we're forming a bubble again.
But again, a vaccine is not 100% effective.
No.
It will stop you
From
getting into
really
hospital
sick,
and getting
maybe.
really sick, maybe. But again, if it's effective against the variant, so we still have to walk
It's
slowly.
still a new virus, and I think people don't realise that, you know. And you know, it's already been proven that it's changing with the different variants. So the more people that catch COVID, then the virus changes.
As viruses spread, they constantly change. These changes are caused by the chance mutation of genes. Mutations can cause new variants of a virus. This natural process is fueling the rapid evolution of coronavirus. Genetic variations produce different physical traits in all organisms. In animals, birds, fish, humans. They are responsible for diversity in nature, for the weird and wonderful bounty of the natural world. Some random variations produce traits that make an organism more likely to survive and reproduce in an environment. Successful variations pass down to future generations. As variation continues, organisms change and evolve. In cell-based organisms like birds or humans, this process may take thousands or millions of years. In viruses, it all happens much, much faster. Coronavirus is evolving in front of our eyes. Successful variations have traits that help a virus to survive and thrive. Perhaps they make the virus more infectious or more resistant to treatments and vaccines. The most successful become variants of concern. New variants of coronavirus are identified by number, B117, B1351, but are more commonly referred to by the country in which they were first identified. The UK variant, the South African variant, the Brazilian variant, and now, in June 2021, the Indian variant. As the pandemic rolls on, global researchers are trying to identify new variants as soon as they emerge. They are figuring out what to do about them. It could mean the redesign of vaccines or new public health methods to keep new variants under control. We have no idea what this process of mutation and variation will throw at us next. But as summer 2021 begins, this is where we are.
When I told my team that I was going to speak, they all said the same, and they said, just tell everyone what we got through. Just tell everyone that what we've been through, and just share our message. It might not be the prettiest of messages, but it's the realistic and the reality of what it was. So hopefully I've shown everyone what we've gone through.
Now, Gibraltar is under the microscope, a test bed for the impact of community vaccination. The outcome is unknown, but there is talk of a return to normal, of hope. Gibraltarians' stories of life in the bubble are part of a worldwide narrative, and that is a story that is still being written.
you.